No end in sight to the government shutdown. President Trump plans a primetime speech and a trip to the border as he insists on more money for a new wall. Plus, the Newsom era begins. Governor Gavin Newsom outlines his vision for California as he's sworn in Sacramento.
On which I'm about to enter.
From North County to the heart of San Diego, Jim Desmond and Nathan Fletcher bring a new representation to the County Board of Supervisors. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. After a day of ceremony, Gavin Newsom will soon begin his work as governor. State lawmakers and former Governor Jerry Brown were among the dignitaries at today's swearing in. Governor Newsom outlined his priorities for California. He also drew a contrast between California and the policies of the President Donald Trump.
There's an administration in Washington that is clearly hostile to California values and California's interests. You know, California has always helped write America's future. And we know the decisions we make would be important at any time. But what we do today is even more consequential because of what is happening in our country.
This afternoon, Governor Newsom signed an executive order that gives the state more bargaining power in negotiating prescription drug prices. Earlier today, I spoke with Capital Public Radio's Ben Adler about today's ceremony, Newsom's priorities, and the legacy of Jerry Brown. So, Ben, watching along, we saw standing ovations and music and even a fist bump from Governor Jerry Brown. Can you tell us what was the atmosphere like there today?
It was celebratory and anticipatory, but also, I think, reflective, because we did have this end of an institution in California, that is Governor Jerry Brown, and the beginning of a new era with California's 40th governor, Gavin Newsom. And Newsom even nodded to that during the speech when he referenced a warning that Governor Brown gave throughout his time in office, the Sermon on the Mount, build our house on rock, not sand, the fiscal house. And Newsom acknowledged that and said, absolutely. And Jerry Brown did create that foundation of rock. Now, Newsom said, we are going to build a house on that, which I think symbolizes not just this transition of power, but also that Newsom does intend to make some big, bold proposals, and proposals that maybe Jerry Brown might not have been so in favor of or forward on.
And speaking of that, did Governor Newsom give any indication of what will be his day one priority?
We have heard him drop a few hints. We've heard him talk about wanting to create universal preschool for 4-year-olds, so universal kindergarten. We expect to see that proposed in his state budget when he puts it out, his very first state budget this coming Thursday. Also looking to do some other investments in childcare and as well as a major expansion of paid family leave. Right now, 6 weeks for new parents, and Newsom wants to expand that to 6 months, as well as allow that time to be spread out over a larger period of time and be shared with family members who might be helping to care for newborns.
Governor Jerry Brown was very outspoken in opposition to the Trump administration on a number of issues, from climate change to immigration. How do you see California's relationship with the federal government changing under Newsom's leadership?
Well, Brown picked his battles on when to speak publicly in criticism, directly or indirectly, of Donald Trump. Newsom has been much more frequent and more direct and pointed in his criticism, both as a candidate and even continuing on through the transition, despite the fact that you had this surreal day a few weeks back where Brown, Newsom, and Trump toured the wildfire zones together. We will see if Newsom tempers his tone when he is in office. In the speech today, he mentioned the administration, the White House. He did not mention Donald Trump by name.
Finally, what will you miss about covering the state capitol led by outgoing Governor Jerry Brown?
Well, love him or hate him, Jerry Brown was a one-of-a-kind American politician. and sometimes you agreed with his policies, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you agreed with his sentiments, sometimes you didn't, but he was always entertaining to cover. He was quick with a Latin quote or a historical or literary reference. Brownisms, there will be fewer of those Brownisms, at least more regularly these days, and Newsom is a different type of governor. So we went from Arnold Schwarzenegger with his movie quotes to Jerry Brown with his Latin quotes, and we'll see what Gavin Newsom follows that up with.
Ben Adler, Capitol Bureau Chief with Capitol Public Radio. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ebony.
For the first time, California's lieutenant governor is a woman. Eleni Kounalakis was sworn in today in Sacramento. She fills the role formerly held by Governor Newsom. Kounalakis is a former U.S. ambassador to Hungary. Her duties as lieutenant governor will include serving on the U.S. Board of Regents and the Cal State Board of Trustees. Nathan Fletcher and Jim Desmond are officially San Diego County Supervisors. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman was there as the pair were sworn in.
That I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties.
Democratic District 4 Supervisor Nathan Fletcher is replacing Republican Ron Roberts, who held the seat for 24 years.
I think bringing new ideas and new perspectives, new approaches, challenging conventional ways of doing things is only good for the body. You know, we still have an obligation to come together and solve problems, but I think it is a new day in the county, and I think it'll be good for the residents of San Diego.
Upon which I'm about to enter.
Republican Jim Desmond is filling Republican Bill Horn's seat, who also served on the board for 24 years.
My priorities are primarily going to be on public safety, health and human services, and homelessness and behavioral health issues, and then also infrastructure and housing.
Desmond says housing people who are homeless is the best way to get them off the streets for good.
Some type of housing for our behavioral health patients and people that are living out on the streets are caught up in this revolving door of getting treatment and then going back to the streets. It really isn't working, and I think housing is the best way. If they're housed, then we can, I think we'll have a better effect of with the programs that we have in place.
Fletcher's priorities also include addressing mental health, homelessness, and housing. On Tuesday, the board is set to address the issue of sheltering people coming across the U.S.-Mexico border and seeking asylum. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been dropping off migrant families on San Diego streets, and nonprofits have been stepping up to house them, but they're asking for help from local government.
The county has a public health obligation, and I think we have an obligation to humanity. And so it would be my hope that we would be proactive in doing our part in partnership with the city and the state and the federal government to try and address this issue.
Desmond says he wants to hear the item before making a decision. Meanwhile, District 2 Supervisor Diane Jacob would rather use county assets to house people who are homeless.
My first priority for any properties that the county may have would be for homeless veterans, period. This is all about priorities and who out there are our priorities. And I would say that homeless veterans that we have on the streets of San Diego County right now take a higher priority for any kind of county property or any kind of county resources over the migrants that are here.
Fletcher teaches a class at UC San Diego, which he plans on continuing as supervisor. Desmond is a commercial pilot and says he still plans on flying a couple weekends per month. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
President Trump continues his push for a new border wall. He's set to deliver a primetime speech and visit the border this week. The president's $5 billion request for wall funding is at the center of the partial government shutdown. Democrats in the House have passed bills that would end the shutdown without money for the wall. Republicans are not allowing a vote in the Senate. President Trump will also visit the southern border on Thursday. The exact location has not been announced. Migrant advocates say asylum-seeking children are suffering abuse during immigration detention and that San Diego County officials should be held accountable. KPBS health reporter Susan Murphy has more.
Members of the Immigration Justice League say a humanitarian crisis is unfolding among migrant children in San Diego County.
The conditions that children who are coming across as refugees are being held in what is called the ICE room. They're being held in conditions that really constitute abuse.
Johnson says migrant children are scantily dressed and not given blankets in air-conditioned rooms during immigration detention, which can last up to 5 days. And she says their meals lack nutrition, leaving them vulnerable to illnesses. They're demanding county supervisors declare a state of emergency.
And so this is holding the county accountable in their role as being caretakers for the children in San Diego County.
Immigration Justice League members say the county's decision last spring to support President Trump's lawsuit against California's Family Values Act and sanctuary laws put supervisors in a position to turn a blind eye. Sue Alderson says children's lives are at risk.
One woman was horrified. They were in the ice room for 5 days. Her kid is sick.
Alderson says the well-being of migrant children falls solely in the hands of volunteers like herself. She helps migrant families with transportation plans after their release from detention.
We help them get their tickets, and we explain how they have to, change planes, change buses, and make sure they have a safe passage, as safe as we can make it.
The Board of Supervisors is scheduled on Tuesday to discuss long and short-term solutions for the migrant crisis. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
A legal fight is playing out over what can be asked in next year's census. A federal judge in San Francisco is hearing testimony this week. The state of California claims the Trump administration's plan to add a question about citizenship is politically motivated. The question hasn't been part of the census since 1950. Critics say it could lead to lower participation and impact California's representation in Congress. A new California law requires prosecutors prove accomplices in murder cases planned or helped in the killing to be convicted. iNews Source reporter Alon Stevens tells us how San Diego County District Attorney plans to challenge the new law.
Previously, individuals could be found guilty of murder even if they didn't do the actual killing. The new law, which Governor Jerry Brown signed last year, will make it harder to charge accomplices with murder. Convicts doing time as accomplices in murder also can now petition to get out of prison early. Assistant District Attorney David Greenberg says San Diego County has about 140 of those kinds of cases.
It's going to take a lot of time and effort. There are going to be people that are dangerous, where their murder conviction will be vacated and they'll be released.
Greenberg says that when the first local inmate asks to be resentenced under the new law, the San Diego DA will challenge it as unconstitutional. DAs throughout the state contend the legislature didn't have the authority to change the felony murder law without voters okaying it. 2 DAs have already challenged the new law. The measure got through the Democratic-controlled legislature with help from some Republicans, including Joel Anderson, a senator from Santee at the time. Here he is at a news conference.
There's nothing more wrong than sending somebody to jail for the rest of their life because they were in a car waiting for their friend to come back with their Slurpee. They never committed the murder. They shouldn't be put in jail for life for that murder.
Supporters of the law say as many as 800 murder convictions could be up for review, so expect to hear more about this in the new year. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source reporter Alon Stevens.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, President Trump plans a trip to the border as the government shutdown continues. That's coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It's a major setback for an effort to clear plastic from the Pacific Ocean. A private company called Ocean Cleanup launched a massive collection device from the Bay Area last fall. Over the weekend, the company announced the device was damaged by wind and waves. It's being towed 800 miles to Hawaii for repairs. The massive boom had other issues, including moving too slowly to properly collect debris. Scientists in San Diego are using remote technology in Antarctica to study the ocean's food chain. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson brought us this story in August about how underwater drones make the research possible.
Krill are tiny crustaceans that got a moment in the spotlight during the 2011 animated film Happy Feet 2.
Well, we are krill. We are meant to look the same. Not me, Bill. There's only one of me in all the world. I am one in a trillion.
Krill are an important part of the Antarctic food web that feeds whales, seals, penguins, and people. The tiny animals are known for their large underwater swarms.
So this is all we are. Lunch. To think we spent our whole lives not knowing the truth. Goodbye, Krill World.
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration scientists have tracked fluctuating krill populations for years. NOAA's Christian Reese says it's part of an international effort.
So we study krill so that we understand whether its trends in abundance are likely to be influenced by how much fishing effort we do, but also whether that fishing effort will then impact the upper trophic levels like penguins and seals.
But packing up a research vessel and traveling to the bottom of the world takes time and money. Both are in short supply at a federal agency with an eye on shrinking budgets. So Reese says his team hopes to do much of that work with autonomous drones.
We can collect data on the water conditions, we can collect data on how much food is out there for krill, and then literally we can collect data on how much biomass of krill there is.
Anthony Cascio handles one of 2 Teledyne manufactured undersea gliders.
Okay, I'll go up a little bit. Hold the outside.
He's inside a unique lab at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center in La Jolla.
All right, let it go. Yeah, it looks good. You got the tail? All right, let's take it up.
The 66-foot-long tank here holds more than 520,000 gallons of seawater.
Let's go south.
That makes it large enough to put one of the gliders through its paces.
All right, let's put it down. You got it, Stephanie?
Once in the water, the glider's software takes over. At the surface, it'll connect with a satellite.
And then it'll go get its GPS coordinates, make sure it knows where it's at, figure out where it's going based off of the directions we told it, and then it starts to dive. Like right now, it's starting to dive.
Today, the mission is a couple of routine dives inside the large tank. The watertight drone is slow but deliberate.
These are deep gliders, so they go to 1,000 meters, and these are also the biggest gliders that Teledyne has manufactured.
Jen Walsh is one of 3 pilots that will watch over the drones on their long winter mission in the Antarctic. She says the machines will do most of the work when they're in the field. They'll dive and surface as they go back and forth over a pre-planned survey area. Piloting is mostly a hands-off operation.
If the glider is in an area of not very complex bathymetry, we're not worried about ice where it is. Maybe it's pretty far offshore at this point. Sometimes that just means keeping an eye on it, making sure it's surfacing when we anticipate that it's going to surface, and sometimes I won't have to get it or give it any direction at all.
The vessels will have to navigate very cold and possibly rough seas. A lot can go wrong. Wall says the drones do surface and check in regularly, and she can monitor the gliders in San Diego on any internet-connected computer.
There's the connections. When the glider surfaces and connects to satellite, it has a very specific ding-ding sound that it makes, and it is like a Pavlovian response. My husband at home will hear it. Oh, your glider's up. And it just means it's connected, which is good, because if it's doing 1,000-meter dives, which it's going to do in the Antarctic, that can take up to 4 hours.
Research biologist Anthony Cascio dropped the drones into the water off the coast of San Diego. The vessel spent 2 weeks at sea practicing maneuvers over and around the San Diego Trough, which is just off the coast of La Jolla. NOAA officials say the vessels will head south this fall for their first research mission in the Antarctic. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Clear skies this week. Aaron Calandra has tonight's forecast.
Good evening. I hope you had a wonderful Monday. The weather is not bad. We are seeing some pretty nice conditions here across San Diego County. To the north, though, well, it's a different story. You could see some green there. They have another storm that is driving in off the Pacific. This one is going to take a northerly track. So over the weekend, we did have some showers. Not the case with this storm. It's going to push off to the north, eventually reaching Washington State. Mountain snow is expected in Northern California. If you're heading in that direction, you could see a couple of delays, but no impact here on San Diego. Tonight, it'll be 52 degrees and clear. Taking a look across the region, Ramona at 43 degrees, Chula Vista at 50, and in Borrego Springs, 45, clear skies. Tomorrow, it's looking good. Mild conditions, plenty of sunshine. It will be beautiful across Southern California. Temperatures here reaching 68 degrees. That is very typical, very average temperatures. And Oceanside at 68, Chula Vista also at 68 degrees, Borrego Springs close to 70. Mount Laguna in those low 50s, but sunny. Now notice the changes coming late week. There's another storm coming in, and this one is going to trek further to the south. We do expect to see showers, but they're going to be overnight Friday into Saturday. So Friday should be sunny, and so will Saturday. So here are the temperatures for the coast. Mostly sunny all week. Temperatures will stay in the 60s. Again, Friday night we'll see some of that wet weather. So Saturday morning could be a bit cloudy. Inland, we start off at 72. We do get a bit cooler. By Saturday, we're down to those mid-60s, mostly sunny skies. And in the mountains, we'll be in the low 50s until the weekend. That's when temperatures drop behind that front moving through. And it will be around 43 for the high Saturday. In the deserts, expect to see temperatures increase. Thursday will be the warmest day of the week at 72 degrees, but then again getting cooler by Saturday down to 67. Mostly sunny skies, but by the weekend it will become pretty cloudy with that front lingering through. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
Cutting-edge technology is on display this week in Las Vegas. The Consumer Electronics Show draws companies from around the world. It's the largest event of its kind and a showcase for innovation. A major trend this year will be the convergence of tech and auto.
The space inside the car is really becoming a space that brands are starting to claim to really communicate with the consumer. I mean, you're trapped in your car for a really long time, so it's a great place for tech to exist. But car companies are only now beginning in their roadmap of evolution to have technology good enough to talk about with the consumer. So a tech show is really about automotive brands saying, hey, we are tech companies, we do have technology. You don't need to turn to Google or Alexa to, fill the space inside your car. We have it too.
The rollout of 5G is also a major trend this year. The technology promises faster speeds for the network used by smartphones and other devices. Today's teenagers have grown up in the world of smartphones. Doctors want to know how all of that screen time is affecting their minds. AP reporter Krista Fourier has a closer look at the link between technology and depression.
Like many teenagers around the country, Laurel Foster uses her phone a lot.
I use Instagram, I use Snapchat. I definitely use social media probably more than I should.
But all that connectivity can come at a price. Studies have linked heavy smartphone use with worsening mental health among teenagers.
At least half of my grade has struggled with depression. I mean, at age 15, I feel like that's not very good.
It's not only anxiety. Government data show that teenage and young adult suicide rates and depression have risen in recent years.
It's not clear why this prevalence is increasing.
But the very device contributing to tech age angst could now be a tool to measure mental health.
If we can have an algorithm that in kids predicts the onset of depression by a change in their smartphone usage or mobility or how they're responding to certain pushed questions on a smartphone, then we have an opportunity to start to develop, again, technology-based prevention programs.
It asks who they're with right now. And
in an ongoing Stanford study, researchers have installed an app that tracks phone activity, changes in typing speed, voice tone, word choice, and how often kids stay at home are among smartphone signals that preliminary studies suggest might be linked with depression. Study participants also answer questions about how they're feeling on the app. After a live-streamed suicide last year, Facebook programmed its AI systems to flag certain words or phrases in online posts. But measuring a teen's private activity raises concern.
It's the thorny ethical issue that we're really going to have to work out to determine what is that teen's right to their freedom of mind. Do they have a right, and I think they do, to not be under constant surveillance?
It's okay. It's just me trying my best, Mom.
Back in San Francisco, Foster is in her 5th year of participating in the study. Researchers say the ultimate goal would be to offer real-time help with automated text messages or alerts to parents.
It made me feel pretty good because, I feel like a lot of teens don't acknowledge their emotions, and I feel like actually seeing them and saying, okay, I am stressed, what can I do about that, is a pretty healthy mechanism for coping with your stress.
Digital footprints giving researchers new insight into growing up in a digital and stressful world. Krista Fourier, Associated Press.
Film Geeks SD kicks off another year film series tonight called Visions of Science Fiction. KPBS film critic Beth Accomando will be co-hosting the series at Digital Gem Cinema.
In 1957, The Incredible Shrinking Man had Orson Welles doing the trailer.
I just saw the impossible happen before my astounded eyes. I saw a man grow smaller and smaller day by day. I saw the loneliest and most frightened creature on earth living a nightmare in a world of giants. The Incredible Shrinking Man.
The film had clever special effects that showed how the world would look to a man who, after being exposed to a strange mist, finds himself shrinking. Now he confronts terror at every turn as the world grows increasingly dangerous. The film boasts an amazing script by Richard Matheson from his own book and serves up a surprisingly existential ending for 1950s Hollywood. Visions of Science Fiction kicks off tonight at 7:30 p.m. at Digital Gem Cinema and continues one Monday night a month throughout the year. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.